Russia must take a view that South Africa and Africa is a friend of Russia, and we have trust surplus. So if for a long period of time Russia has been putting its investments, for instance, into the West, I think time has come, because the West is treating Russia in a manner which is a little bit unfair. So there are trust deficit between Russia and the Western Europe, which is informed by a number of issues. That's a reality. And you can trust us, because we have a long history together. We must now build an infrastructure which is going to be more solid and more reliable and more, in terms of building the right capacity to produce and generate, so that we are able to distribute for everybody. So nuclear is going to help us insofar as that, but it requires big pockets. It requires big pockets. So Russia, being a major player in the BRICS, but also in the international arena, so Russia must come in Africa. It must be in the forefront. We can't rely to the West, because West represent those who once colonized us. And for them, they want to maintain that trajectory of colonization so that we only remain consumers and not the players. So we don't want to go to the IMF and the World Bank to borrow money, because that will be tantamount to recolonization. We will forever be doomed in that way. We'll never find ourselves raising our head again. So Russia must help us to mitigate those issues and ensure that we get the right type of financing, but the right type of infrastructural investment which is going to help us with a sustainable and affordable energy. The multipolar world will help us to realize a situation wherein we must have an alternative international finance system. President Putin is leading from the front insofar as that. He has already brought in China to say, let's work on this model. Already that is going to help us to have a new currency internationally, which we may base all other transactions on that currency, instead of a single currency that has dominated us and actually manipulated the international finance system for too long. So the multi-polar system will help us to ensure that now we can begin to think freely, to think out of the box, and come up with creative ways of transacting. Transactions that are going to help ordinary people. Because at the end of the day, the single international finance system which has been relying on dollars for a long time, it has created major poverty in the world. Because what it does, it makes the rich the richest, and it leaves a big gap for the poor to remain the poorest. But when President Putin puts, some works in the game, it helps us now to begin to tilt the balance of forces, in favor of the majority of the people on the planet Earth will gain in the long term insofar as what he is trying to do. Because that balance has always been needed in order to circumvent the issue of the haves always being those that are getting at the end of the day at the expense of the poorest of the poor. So I think the multipolar world will help us with things like that, to strike a balance between humanity and profits and so on and so forth. I see it at that level.